If migration does not literally cause you to become a criminal, but rather only moves crime around, restricting migration to affect crime only makes sense if it is better the crime happened to some people rather than others. That's essentially going to be the argument. In particular, what I'm not saying is that immigrants aren't actually more likely to commit crimes. While that may not be true for many immigrant groups to the US or to Canada, many other immigrants really are more violent, and so arguments against this are not that interesting. Similarly, blaming socioeconomic circumstances is not that interesting to me if there is no effective remedy. My actual problem is that the argument either has to make assumptions that are unpalatable to large majorities of the population, or it proves too much, meaning it implies policy consequences the person saying it will not actually endorse. Look at the fictitious Republic of the Country and Nationstan, with a low and high crime rate respectively of 1 and 10%. 1,000 people want to migrate from Nationstan to the Republic, presumably for economic reasons, since this is supposed to be voluntary. And now take the perspective of a benevolent emperor of both countries caring about their subjects and them not being subjected to crime. In expectation, 100 crimes committed by natives will disappear from Nationstan and 100 crimes committed by immigrants will appear in the Republic, leading to a net zero change in the total amount, as you are just moving quantities around and not taking away or adding anything. Benevolent emperor that you are, you allow unlimited migration among your subjects, as it has no impact on criminality. There could be other reasons you may have for still opposing and stopping this migration between your dominions. You may think the crime wouldn't have happened in Nationstan, or that it would have been better had it been committed there, because their people deserve to be victimized more than citizens of their republic. If you think the crime wouldn't have happened in Nationstan, that is, the number of crimes subtracted from Nationstan is smaller than the number of crimes added to the republic, that means people literally are turned into criminals by migrating from A to B. It's not enough that the group of migrants simply has a higher crime rate than the total population of Nationstan. So you might say, look, the Nationstan immigrants are more criminal than the remaining citizens of Nationstan, therefore migration causes them to become a criminal. The same number would still get added and subtracted from both countries. But the same group of people need to become more criminal. Alternatively, crime is contagious, turning some of the native population in the Republic into criminals. But also the contagiousness is magically higher there, since the 1,000 people less in Nationstan will also reduce how many people in Nationstan get infected by the metaphorical crime virus. While that's not physically impossible, I think crime is mostly inherent rather than due to socioeconomic circumstances that might differ between countries. But also more practically, imagine migration from Afghanistan to Spain. Are the greater economic opportunities that probably caused the migration in the first place going to increase criminality? The more efficient police force and justice system? Deterrence doesn't do anything anyway, so even if the punishments for crimes in Spain are less, that won't have much of an effect on the crime rates. If you're not committing yourself to weird theories about how moving from A to B turns people into criminals, maybe you value a crime in the Republic higher, as in you think it's worse there. Some reasons may come to mind to the ethically informed listener. The citizens of Nationstan might care less about being victims of crimes, or are simply less able to suffer. That's not impossible, but unlikely. They might have waived their rights not to be victims of those crimes in some way. This too is not impossible, but unlikely. Or they may simply be worth less in some general sense. Even though there are no utility-maximizing reasons to shift crime onto them, and they don't deserve to be victimized more in any rights-based account, for some other unspecified reason, their interests weigh less heavy in your decision-making as their benevolent emperor. So then that's the unpalatable assumption. In reality, you'd, for example, have to assume that it is better when Afghan men assault Afghan women than when Afghan men assault Spanish women. And hence we should limit migration from Afghanistan to Spain, which is not a republic, but who cares? Secondly, the argument proves too much. Why stop at limiting migration between nations? Why not extend these restrictions to subnational levels, that is, administrative units like the American states or the English counties, or even extend migration restrictions to entirely newly invented divisions? The optimal migration divisions just happen to exactly coincide with national borders? Or the reasons for limiting migration flows across national borders magically stop applying 100 miles into the country? Is there some magical fluid permeating national borders? In any case, nationalists would probably object to splitting countries in this manner, but some neo-reactionary types might think this is a point in favor of no-voice, free-exit patchworks of freely associated city-states, essentially keeping dividing this way all the way down to the city level. But given the externalities that location decisions would bring if we assume migration restrictions actually do something for crime, there is no reason to assume market mechanisms would converge on an efficient border regime either. The efficient solution would be an international organization, setting global borders according to cost-benefit analyses. If all of this seems as unintuitive to you as it does to me, that may be because at the end of the day, crime is more like car accidents. If we weren't talking about crime rates, but car accident rates, high in Nationstan and low in the Republic, it should be immediately clear that we can't reduce car accidents via migration policy measures, and preferring accidents in Nationstan only really makes sense if they deserve it more, which is a somewhat idiosyncratic worldview. If the guy migrating isn't more at risk of crashing his car, migration policy can only move around where accidents happen, which makes as much sense as moving them from one street to the next. If the guy is in fact more likely to crash in the Republic, what's the conclusion? Are you going to say, traffic regulations here in the Republic are lacking, people are more accident prone here than in other parts of the world? Of course we need to close the borders, but only the national borders? Within the Republic, every Easterner is allowed to move around and harass innocent Westerners with their auto accidents? Clearly, the correct response is to modulate traffic regulations and not to interfere with a completely unrelated market, that is, the labor market, at potentially enormous efficiency losses. Okay, so summing all of that up, are there policy implications of this argument if you feel inclined to buy it? For one, just use policy tools that are fit to solve the problem you want to solve. Using policy X to solve unrelated problem Y will be either inefficient or straight up not effective at all. Crime is solved via policies that reduce crime, like longer sentences, incapacitating criminals for longer, or more police officers and so on, leading to higher clearance rates, but not by trying to stop criminals from moving from A to B. Obesity will be solved with subsidized semaglutides, not by moving all fat people into one county so that the average obesity rate in all other counties can be low. Enabling poor people to use public transit is better accomplished by just giving them the appropriate amount of money directly, rather than regulating the price of public transit, which causes a billion other inefficiencies. A policy implication that does not follow is that you should be for unrestricted migration. You may have policy goals different from crime control, like maintaining the white race, and restricting migration might make sense if you also suspect that immigration will somehow dissolve it, for example via intermarriage between white natives and non-white immigrants, or because the presence of non-whites will somehow reduce the fertility of whites. If neither of those obtain, non-white immigration would be irrelevant to the number of white people in the world, of course. But if you want to maximize global utility, you should be indifferent between utility over here and utility over there, and not squander the efficiency gains of market-based labor allocation, which is just what open borders are, for half-thought-out gut feelings.